Hi, welcome to Camp Happy Mail. I'm Maureen and I'm glad you're here today. For today's video, I thought we would do something a little different. Over the years, I have tried many techniques. I love techniques where you use watercolors or gel printing or fun explosion powders or just some fancy papers, embossing folders, all kinds of different techniques to make different kinds of backgrounds. Ultimately, you want to take those backgrounds and eventually turn them into cards. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm in need of some thank you cards to keep at work. Full disclosure, I work for a wholesale distribution company, and we have vendor reps that come in for the companies that we sell their products. And every now and then, the vendors will do something at our location, whether it be a training event or classes, or they'll bring one of their show trucks that our customers can go and take a tour of all the latest and greatest products, that kind of thing. And I just thought it would be nice that whenever they do these things, that maybe we send them a thank you card. It's not something that we've done before. We normally just do verbal thank yous, but I just thought maybe, whenever a vendor buys us lunch, for example, maybe we send them a thank you card that's signed by everybody in the company that got to partake in the lunch, or that got to go to the training classes or listen to their training sessions on the different products or whatever. I just thought it would be something nice. And because I'm a card maker, why not? So today we're going to take these backgrounds and we're going to attempt to make some thank you cards that can be used later to send to some of our vendors. So the first thing I'm going to do is sort out the backgrounds between pieces that can be used for on the backgrounds, or backgrounds that are pretty much done that just might need to have a little bit of decoration on them, and they can just be matted as they are. As you can see, this one has some light embossing on it of a design. Well, that was a lot of backgrounds. You don't realize how many different techniques you do until you actually start sorting them out. And full disclosure, that is not all of the backgrounds that I have. I still have a big box of other backgrounds. There will be some videos coming up showing how I made some of these ones. I recognize them from other videos that I've been editing. But anyways, I've decided to go ahead and go with these three. And I think we're actually only going to make 2 of these, but because I already had the paper picked out for them and matched up, that's one less thing I have to do. So we're going to start with this pink one. That background, if you're interested in knowing how that was made, is called the Bargello technique, and I'd be happy to do a video showing how to make that. So if you want to see that, leave me a comment on that. It's a technique that I learned from my friend Julia, and it's a lot of fun to do, and it's a great way to use up scrap strips. So that piece of paper there is, it's a piece of Stampin' Up! Cardstock. I believe it's probably polished pink, trying to guess by the color. Standard A2 size card base, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and just scored down the middle. Now I'm going to take a look at this and figure out, what do I want to do with this? It looks a little bit plain to me, but I got to be careful in what I do because that background is really busy and I don't want to make it any more busy than what it is. This glitter paper is by scrapbook.com. It's a great glitter paper. It's actually really thin, doesn't add a lot of weight to your cards, which is what I love about it. And it comes in all kinds of beautiful colors. So I'm going to take that paper and I am going to size this up because I want to make sure you're able to see it. I think that we're going to have to cut down both of these pieces, if I remember correctly, because they are both larger than the size of the card base. So we're going to measure this up. We're just going to eyeball it. I very rarely measure anything. So I'm going to eyeball this again just to be sure, measure twice, cut once, but we're not measuring, so eyeball twice, cut once. And once I know for sure what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and trim both of these down. Now that these pieces are both cut down, I am going to lay them out here one more time and give it a good look over. And I'm debating, do I want more of the card base to show or not? And I think we're just going to leave it how it is. So the next thing we need to do is to move on to the sentiment. And because these are thank you cards, I pulled out all of the dies that I have to say thank you, thanks, in one way or another. And I'm just trying to decide which one would be best. That one might work. The letters are a little bit thin on it. I was really looking for something that had a top layer and a shadow to it. That was in a nice scripty font. Now that one was a scripty font, but it didn't have a shadow. But then there's this one. This is by Pink and Main, and I can tell that it's Pink and Main because their dies are pink, and I love that about them. And this one does have the shadow, and it has the top layer. So we're going to go ahead and go with this one. So I did edit out the die cutting of the shadow and the die cutting and weeding of the word thanks. You've seen me die cut before, you know how that's done. So now I'm just going to lay out these pieces just to make sure that everything looks how I want it to look. I do this many times with every card that I make. I lay things out again and again and again just to make sure, because I want them to be as perfect as they can be. And now I'm thinking that piece of glitter cardstock there, I'm going to do the trick that I normally do, which is we're going to salvage some of that for on another card. If you're a card maker or you've been a card maker for any amount of time, you know that the glitter cardstock, the specialty cardstocks, are a little more expensive. And if you can stretch them out to go a little bit longer or a little ways further, that's always a good thing. So basically, I measured down so that I could just make a frame, and that's what's going to go on my card. And then that piece I'm going to put in my stash for later. It's a great trick if you don't like to waste supplies. And now, to fill that hole of the frame, I'm just going to cut a piece out of just plain white cardstock, and we'll fill that glitter frame with that so that the rest of the card won't sag down into where that hole is. It's just a way to make your cardstock go, your specialty cardstock go a little further. So now we're going to start to assemble this. Okay, so I've turned those two pieces over. That's the glitter frame and the white cardstock. And I'm just using mint tape from scrapbook.com to tape that white piece into the frame. You can use any kind of tape on this, really. I've used Scotch tape before and it holds just fine. So now I'm going to use my glue. This is Barely Art's liquid glue, and I'm going to just essentially put enough glue on this, being rather generous with the glue actually, because I don't want this to come apart. You don't want people to know that you cut out the centerpiece of that glitter cardstock, right? So you put enough glue on here so that it's not going to come apart. And I'm just going to put this down on the card base. And just like that. So the next thing we're going to do is this piece that has the Technique base on the front of it. This is a little bit thicker than the cardstock base and everything, because there are a couple of layers to that Bargello Technique. So I decided to pull out the tear and tape. The tear and tape seems to hold a little bit better. You can definitely use liquid tape on this or liquid glue on this if you want to. I didn't have any really strong adhesive as far as liquid glue goes. And I found that the tear and tape seems to hold really well. And because part of this is going to be over top of that glitter paper, I also wanted something that was definitely going to hold it down, whereas the thin liquid glue may not do that. So I've got it all taped up, and we're just going to press this down really well. Now we're going to work on that sentiment. I did not layer up the sentiment. Usually I would put at least 2 or 3 layers to this sentiment, just to give it some dimension, but I was trying to keep these cards a little bit on the flatter side. These are going to be mailed, and I didn't want to have to worry about how many stamps I was going to need to put on them, because these are going to sit in my desk at work until we're ready to use them. So I just used the thanks in one layer and the shadow in one layer. And now we're going to pop this up with some dimensionals. These are dimensionals by Stampin' Up. They come in 2 sizes. There's a large and a small. The nice thing about the Stampin' Up dimensionals is, regardless of whether you have the small ones or the large ones, they're all the same height. So you can mix, and you'll see me doing that here. I put some large ones on there, and now I'm going to put some small ones on there. Because they're all the same height, you don't have to worry about your sentiment not laying flat. That's the one thing that I do like about their foam hexagons. They're not foam squares, they're actually hexagons. So I do keep a stash of these. It's one of the only things that I buy from Stampin' Up, currently anyways. So we're just going to place this on the front, and I think that's going to make our card. Now I am thinking maybe I want to put a couple gemstones on this, a little bit of bling. So we're going to pull out some bling and see if we can find something that matches up here. This is my tiny little bling box. This is most of my bling, at least the bling that's on the acetate sheets or on the cardboard backings or whatever. Most of these are Honeybee, some of them are Stampin' Up, and then there's some offbeat brands in here. And I'm just trying to find something that's going to match the pinks. Pink is a tough color because there's so many different shades of pink, but I think I found something that's going to work. Now, these ones I've had since my scrapbooking days, believe it or not. These are probably 10 years old. I can't even tell you what brand these ones are. But they come on an adhesive strip already. So there already is glue on the back of these. But I'm finding that when I pulled these off of that acetate backing, the old adhesive that was on them was sticking outside of the edges. So I was peeling that off. That's what you see me doing here. I'm peeling off the old adhesive so that I can stick them down on my glue. I didn't want to leave that adhesive backing on there because it was sticking off of the edges and it just looked really sloppy. So you'll see me do that where I'm pulling off the adhesive. Even though they're older supplies, they still work. Sometimes you just have to make modifications to them to make them work a little better. And that's what we're doing. So this card is just about done with those little pieces there. And there we have it. That is card number 1. For card number 2, we actually have more pieces than we did with card number 1. There were 2 of these backgrounds that I had made. And since they were made with the same scraps, I was able to throw them into the same little packet there. And we're going to make one card using both of these. So as with the first card, it's just a standard size A2 card, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, folded in half. And now I'm just laying these out to figure out what I want to do. I know there's going to be a lot of layers to these. And I thought that because there was some gold within the pattern paper that was used on these, that maybe we would frame these or mat these in gold. They're going to be a little bit more fancy than the first one. So I'm now trying to figure out exactly what do I want to do. I knew I wanted to use both pieces. I didn't want to put these back into my backgrounds again. So I decided I'm going to do multiple frames or multiple matte layers on these. And now I'm just trying to figure out which sizes I want to use. That die set that I just had out there is by Hero Arts. That's their infinity rectangle nesting dies. So now I'm going to essentially just die cut out the background frame that will go behind the bigger piece. And this is the same trick that I showed you on the first card, where we're going to cut out the center of this card. And essentially we're going to fill that center with a piece of just white cardstock. Because we're actually going to use that gold piece instead of saving it for later. We're going to use it on this same card. So I wanted to salvage that to be able to use it. And there's our white piece of cardstock that's going to go in the center of that background gold frame. And now I'm looking at these 2 pieces, and I know that I want to mat that decorative piece on the gold, but the decorative piece is bigger than the gold. So I'm going to pull out another die, and we're going to trim this down some. I almost hated to trim it down because it was so pretty, but for this card, that's what we got to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this through, and I think I go back and forth with this a couple of times because, as I said earlier, this technique creates a couple of layers on the piece of cardstock. So in order for this to cut through, I had to run it through a couple of times, and you'll see there it didn't cut the whole way through. So I'm just going to turn it and run it through again. And there we have it. It cut out just fine. For the sentiments on this, it is a thanks die. It does have a shadow on it, and it's by scrapbook.com. The glue that they use on these, man, is it strong. I had a really tough time getting it off of this. I haven't transferred these over to magnets yet. Normally I would store these on a magnetic sheet, but I just haven't done that yet. So I decided to cut out the shadow in the same purple that the card base is out of, and then the thanks out of that same gold paper. I didn't show the die cutting of these again because you know how to die cut a sentiment. So now we're going to go ahead and assemble this. As like before, we're just going to use some mint tape, and we're going to tape that white piece of cardstock into the frame. And then I'm going to use the tear-in tape, and that will secure this piece. That will secure this piece down to our card base. I was going to use the liquid glue, and then I decided on the tear-in tape. I do use a lot of tear and tape on all of these layers because there are so many layers and some of these layers are really thick. I was overly generous with the tear and tape on these. So that's our first layer, and we're going to put that on the background, and then we're going to work on not that gold piece, but that other decorative piece. Now this is a really thick piece because it has that Bargello technique on it, and I am going to load this up with the tear and tape as well. And then we're going to put this one down, centered on there nicely. Everything is just eyeballed. But because I use the nesting dies, it makes it a lot easier to eyeball things and get them straight. So now we're going to put the gold piece down. In hindsight, I could have cut another small piece out of the section of that gold paper. I didn't think about it. I was just, at this point, I was just so excited about getting this one done. And I was kind of running out of time for the day. So I just let it go. Added the second Bargello piece on there, and now we're going to put together the sentiment. The sentiment is being put together the same way as the first one. There are not additional layers to this. I decided to keep this as flat as possible because I have so many layers underneath this, and I think that'll be just fine. I still think I'll be able to get away with mailing this with just one stamp. So we're going to make sure that this is all put down, and I'm getting the excess glue off of it. Metallic paper is a little strange in that you have to make sure that you get all the glue off of it, otherwise it dries in a matte finish and it doesn't look that nice. So you got to be real careful when using liquid glue on the metallic paper. So now I'm just using the Stampin' Up! Dimensionals to put them on the back of this so that it'll be elevated just a little bit. I think these are probably 1 millimeter high. I never really measured them and I don't remember what the description says, but they're not that high that they're like overly dimensioned. But that's it. That's our second card. So these are our 2 cards today, made from backgrounds that I had done previously. And I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. I think they're kind of nice. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you'll be back again soon to see the next video. Thanks. Bye.